Here we go. This takes me back. It's been 13 years since, or 12 and a half, since the purging of the Occupy Wall Street protests, but seeing hundreds of NYPD officers move in on Columbia occupation, officers mobilized on 113th. Apparently, they've cordoned off streets from 113th to 118th, surrounding the Morningside campus. As officers approached, it was reported by Omar Jimenez, who reported on the fiery but mostly peaceful protests in Kenosha, that Columbia University students have been ordered to shelter in place as a large group of police officers is amassing outside the gates of campus. Here we go. So we're live, tracking what's going on. We've seen police preparing. We obviously have this from at Timcast News on Twitter. We've got large NYPD contingent, including emergency vehicles, service vehicles, are heading towards Columbia University. Look at that. Oh, boy.
Yeah, that's great. Where was this when David Dorn was being murdered? That would have been really helpful, wouldn't it?
Well, I mean, did the guy who attacked David Dorn say anything about Israel?
Yeah, exactly.
We only have one motivator in this country.
Yeah. No, he was stealing a TV or something like that. So he thought it warranted taking... I mean, that's just... What a horrible... The summer of love, man. They did nothing. But look, you know, people are going to say, they're going to say, you see, that's Trump versus Biden. They're going to say Biden had no problem calling in the troops, shutting down whatever you want to call it. They're going to call it an anti-Semitic protest and all that stuff. And they're going to say that Trump wouldn't. Trump allowed it to happen.
They're going to say that, but again, this is leftist infighting on, you know, what is essentially a bastion of academic progressivism. Columbia University, one of the most, an Ivy League university in the center of New York, or not in the center, but in New York City. I think ultimately it might work for 10 seconds that Biden might say, oh, well, I called in the troops. But his base is going to say, you called it on us. We don't want to vote for you. We don't like you. You take TikTok away and you won't let us fight for, you know, Palestine or whatever the cause of the month is. And this will ultimately, there's no recovering from any of this for Biden. I don't know that his team is capable enough to be able to spin this in a positive light for his campaign in the next year. And that's why I think you get this this sort of confidence move from the Trump campaign when he has the Time magazine interview. And I think that's why you see these mainstream publications starting to acknowledge, like, hey, actually, the challenge to Trump is not that great. One of the lines in the Time article that came out today was, he's in the best position to win the White House that he has been in the last 2 election cycles, which means the one he lost, but also the one he won. I mean, if they're not telling you that they're sort of looking that they might have to concede, you're not reading the text here.
But that was a Davos crowd at the last year's, this early year's World Economic Forum meeting. They were saying we were expecting another Trump presidency, and so we're going to have to grapple with the resurfacing specter of populism. And it's like, okay, well, if the elite are essentially planning for Trump to come in, brace for impact.
I just want to say thank you to the men and women of the New York City Police Department who are getting rid of these violent anti-Semitic protesters, and I cheer for their removal and law and order in this regard. I'm half kidding. I don't really think the protests are wholly anti-Semitic. I think there are anti-Semites there. I think there have been anti-Semitic things. But for the most part, I think they're communists who have no idea what they're doing and are protesting nothing, and they're vandalizing and smashing things and attacking people. And they don't believe in free speech, so I will cheer when they don't get it either. So thank you, NYPD. There you go.
Yeah, I will say the UK protests have a slightly different flavor just because we have a very different demographic reality. Like, these are clearly terminally online gay race communists, whereas there is a strong Islamic current to the ones in the UK. And again, like, anti-Semitism is not the angle I'm going to attack it on because I'm not Jewish. They also hate England, so therefore I want them gone. But I think it's fair to say, I'll invoke Douglas Murray's analogy here when he asked Piers Morgan. Well, Piers Morgan said, why do you want these protests shut down, even if it's just 10% that are firing fireworks and calling for jihad? And he said, well, if you went on a march on week 1 and you found that the British National Party there were calling for the murder of all black people, would you not question whether or not you should go on week 2, and then by week 3 you'd probably call it quits if they kept saying the same thing? Because I would. And so you're right to say that these people do have an anti-Semitic bent, and they're clearly endorsing Hamas if they're wearing their paraphernalia and marching with people that constantly lionize them as some kind of revolutionary hero.
Well, here's the challenge too. I mean, we saw with BLM, they posted a picture of the paraglider, the Hamas paraglider. They're celebrating it from the river to the sea. It is a word game manipulation to claim that it has nothing to do with it. It means the eradication of Israel.
Yeah.
You can't come out and say Israel doesn't exist. It's an occupation of Palestinian land, and we want from the river to the sea Palestine to be free, but they're not calling for the destruction of Israel. So they literally are. And then I ask people, and they're like, no, we're just saying that the people of Gaza the Palestinians should be free to return to their home. And I'm like, and they think their home is where? Yeah, right. The rest of Israel. So it's like, clearly it's just war. This is the problem I have with everybody, from the staunchly anti-Israel to the staunchly anti-Hamas, pro-Israel side. Like, dude, look, and I suppose this will be viewed as more pro-Israel. I guess it's war. And it's pro-Israel only because Israel's winning. It's war. And Israel's winning. Sorry, thanks, have a nice day. I don't care to be involved. I am livid that the U.S. is invading. We should not be involved in this. They lie, cheat, and steal to get our troops involved in this. I don't have anything to do with it. I don't care about the moral qualms of the religious Holy Land and the two groups, or whatever, three, that are fighting over this. I don't want to be involved. So it's war. Congratulations. War is bad. Bad things happen. People do bad things.
People that are looking for, they say Palestine will be free, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free or whatever. There is no outcome that is going to be peaceful unless it's wiping out all the Jews. Right, like that is kind of obvious, and I don't care what anyone. I don't care what anyone says, because they're going to sit there and they're going to try and act like they're going to make the argument that no, it's actually about Israel, blah blah blah. But I say this all the time. Even if you get rid of the walls and you allow the people of Gaza to mix freely with the people of Israel, there are enough people in Gaza that want to kill all the Jews that they would end up killing all the Jews. That's all there is to it.
This is why I'm just...
It's not all of them.
We had Alad Eliyahu on the show recently, and he said something to the effect that we were talking about criticism of Israel's military stuff, and he goes like, but don't you think that's kind of anti-Semitic? And I'm like, no. If Israel is blowing up civilians, criticizing a military operation has nothing to do with the religion of it. When the U.S. invaded Iraq, I didn't say, these Christians, how dare they? It's Christians. No, it's the degenerate warmongers. And when Islamic nations engage in this, like the Saudi conflict with Yemen, it's like, I'm not blaming the religion unless it is like ISIS, in which case it's the specific sect of this religious ideology they're engaged in. But the challenge I see with Israel is that the people who are protesting, for instance, at Columbia, who identify as Jewish and wave an Israeli flag because it is the only Jewish state, they don't see a difference. They think that they have a right to have a state. And calling for the destruction of their state is calling for the destruction of the only Jewish country. So their view is that you're basically saying Jews don't get a country. That what they would say is anti-Semitic. Fighting a sneeze.
Well, I'm just waiting for Secretary Lloyd Austin to build a port in the Hudson River, sort of across from the Columbia campus. And he's not going to send in the military. He's just going to set it up nearby in case they need humanitarian aids. Maybe he can send them some food and water.
Well, if I may say something that was going to sound very contentious, but I think may offer Jews who feel politically homeless right now an alliance. Israel, when they accuse Israel of being an ethno-state, to a degree it is, because Judaism is both a religion and an ethnicity, right? Even though you have a large proportion of Arabs living in there.
I don't know why that's a problem.
This is my point, right? This is my point. So, demographer Paul Morland works for Jordan Peterson's ARC, so again, not a far-right figure unless you're insane. He wargamed out demographics for the UK, Japan, and Israel. And he said, okay, the UK has low birth rates, high immigration, low ethnic cohesion. With current trends, by 2083, we're going to be 54% first-generation immigrant. That is not a country. That is majority of people arrived yesterday. There is no culture there. Instead, he, as a Jewish man, said, as a Jewish man living in a nominally white Christian country, I would quite like England to be like Israel, to have a cohesive national identity, a cohesive religious identity, to have high birth rates, to have high GDP per capita, to have low migration, particularly from the nations that want to do you harm. And so I can accept, even though I have major theological differences with Israel as a Catholic, I can accept the Israeli argument for national determination and national sovereignty if they are also willing to cooperate with their partner states like the US and the UK to have those same policies without calling it anti-Semitic, racist, or far right. I think that would be a fair compromise.
Yeah, I don't care as much with. I think the issue that we have in the United States is mass unchecked immigration, illegal immigration, and if it were regulated properly with assimilation, we seek to maintain our culture, and those who come here must abide by and live by this. The example I would use is the turn of the century, the turn of the 1800s to 1900s, when many people were emigrating here, and they said, "We're going to learn English. You're going to learn English." I know people whose grandparents said, "You will not learn the language of your home country." And I'm like, wow, I mean, that goes a little far. But people came from Italy, they came from Ireland, and they said to their kids, "You will learn English and you will not learn Irish because you will be American." And then what happened is we got America. I mean, people wanted to be a part of what we were doing. They wanted to share in our culture. And now what we have over the past couple of decades is people who are coming here, bringing a different language, creating basically isolated racial villages that they're these little enclaves, which creates the segregation creates animosity and hatred, and it leads to violence. And then we have this idea of multiculturalism. Multiculturalism, they try to masquerade using their word games as the melting pot where everyone lives together.
No.
But what they're really doing is creating segregated pockets where people don't like each other, and you can't have two different cultures that completely hate each other meshing together. It's like oil and water.
So the multicultural thing is different from the melting pot. What I grew up with as a Gen Xer, we had the melting pot, which was the idea that people would come to the United States and you would assimilate. We all came from different places, but we all came to the United States. We became American, and that was something that was normal. The multicultural idea is something that is different from that. If you go and you say that we're a melting pot nowadays, you get corrected by intersectional people. They say that it's racist, that it's bad, which in my opinion, I don't see why it's bad to say you should come to the United States and be like, try to be an American. What you guys have going on over in the UK, which we were discussing a little bit earlier, is a little different. Like in England, there are English people, right? In Scotland, there are Scottish people. In Ireland, there are Irish people.
Hypothetically.
But in America, there isn't like any kind of ethnicity that makes you American. America is unique in that you can come to America, buy into the values, and you become an American.
I do have a point of disagreement, but
other places in the world don't have that, and I don't see why there are people that have an objection to England being full of English people, Japan being full of Japanese people, Pakistan being full of Pakistani people. I don't understand why why people act as if that is something offensive when that is the most natural thing in all of human history. People that are from a certain area tend to be, that's where they're from. It's like there's nothing wrong with India being full of Indian people.
Have you seen, this better than all of us, what's going on in Ireland? Can you break down? Because I saw like a picture of graffiti and it said Irish only or something.
So Ireland has a population of about 5 million. And in the last couple of years, they've taken in about 100,000 so-called refugees. Lots of them as well are coming over because since the Good Friday Agreement, after all the IRA troubles, Northern Ireland and Ireland have a permeable border, so you don't have to show a passport to get across from the part of Ireland that's connected to the UK to Ireland, which is independent. And so many people that live in the UK are going from England, Scotland, or Wales over to Northern Ireland, just walking across the border and claiming asylum in Ireland. So it's putting a hell of a lot of stress on the Irish immigration system. Also, people are very angry because I believe the politicians themselves own a lot of the hotels that they're putting the migrants up in. So the politicians are making a lot of money. And shortly after a school teacher and a couple of children were stabbed, and they found out that this man was a migrant who had settled in Ireland for many years and clearly hadn't integrated. The Irish politicians were saying diversity is our strength, you're a racist if you notice. The Irish people started protesting en masse, and the protests have continued to go on. And the reason this is happening in Ireland and not in England is because the Irish still have a strong sense of ethnic identity. Like George Orwell wrote about this well before. Celtic nationalism, so that's the devolved administrations, England, Scotland, Wales, Scotland, Wales, Ireland. Their identity is often born out of anti-English sentiment, even though they're a similar ethnic group. And so, if they feel like the Irish ethnic group is being incurred upon, not just by the English, but by other ethnic groups that are exploiting their lax asylum system, they will kick up a stink about it. And so they're like global managers that are currently in the Irish government. Ironically, Sinn Féin, who were the political wing of the IRA are now diversity is our strength, flying the rainbow flag. The Irish Patriots are fighting Sinn Féin, which I can't believe I, as an Englishman, are on the side of the Irish Patriots, given, I mean, half Irish as well, so, you know, for my sins. But that's basically what's happening. It's the island is being disproportionately flooded with migrants, and the Irish people are kicking up a stink. I will say, though, with the American context, I do think there is an unexamined amount of priors baked into the America as an idea belief, because almost entirely the founding fathers were Englishmen. They thought of themselves as Englishmen, and liberalism is essentially how Englishmen think of themselves, like the Magna Carta and social custom, extracted out of England and transposed on other places. This is why it doesn't work, why you can't export democracy to Iraq and the like. And the problem you have is that you've transposed liberalism onto old world nations under American hegemony. So now England, even though it has an ethnic identity, or Germany and the like, are compelled to act as if they are America, and then noticing that people that come from other countries and have ethnic and historical and cultural baggage and don't overnight assimilate into the melting pot, which is, I think, kind of cruel to expect them to just lose their memory as soon as they actually step into a country. If you say that might cause conflict, that is itself far right. So treating England and the like America, and America thinking that there isn't also an ethnic component to its founding, has led to a lot of conflict. I would rather we were just honest about these things.
I think the politics of Ireland, considering everything that's going on with mass migration, is very interesting. I assume you've been to Belfast.
No.
You've not?
No.
Because I would assume, you know, the people in the area are much more likely than I or other people. But I went there and I saw the peace wall. And one side is pro-Palestine. And the Irish, they compare themselves to the Palestinians under occupation. And the other side is pro-Israel. And there's actually graffiti painted by people who claim that the Irish there are a lost tribe of Israel. And what you see is hyper-tribal politics based on whether it was, you know, Northern Ireland, the UK, versus the you know, Ireland itself. But it gets really interesting then. With the EU and the Schengen zone, the border's dissolved. And now you can freely move about Northern Ireland and Ireland as if the conflict is over. It just kind of stopped. And then you end up with mass migration into Ireland among people who had been fighting for hundreds of years to preserve their and revive their language. I saw graffiti in Gaelic. I believe that's what it's called, right? And it was explained to me by a local that basically Irish people they're teaching it. They're trying to restore their language. It was taken from them. They don't like the British and all of these things. And then we see the EU mass migration stuff. There was a video where someone, I think they were in Derry. Is that the name of the city? I'm not sure. They asked people what the most common name was. Did you see this video? Mm-hmm. You saw this one, right? Was it in Derry?
I think
they're in some Irish city. I don't know anything about Ireland, but they're like, what do you think the most common name born to someone in Ireland was this year? And they were like Thomas and, you know, things like that. And they're like Muhammad. And the people there get shocked.
Same in London.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, it's Muhammad.
They're totally thrown off by it because I think people were sold this immigration isn't happening, you're not allowed to acknowledge it line for so long. But I think ultimately the Irish people are a great example. The stabbing that you referenced, from what I remember about it, the students attended a Gaelic specific school. They were being taught a specific language. And so again, you know, crime against lawful citizens by people who are in countries illegally happens all the time in a lot of countries. But again, to have this prime example of people who are the future of your country trying to learn a native language being attacked and targeted by someone who's not even in the system legally is extremely painful. And I think you're right. I think America doesn't acknowledge the fact, we sort of take for granted the fact that we're actually born of European nations, and it gave us the foundation of who we are. I think it is important. I think it's complicated because America is such a large geographic nation that our immigration patterns changed over time. On the other hand, ultimately, all of the values, when we talk about American values, for the most part, are derived from some form of pretty much British but European doctrine. And I think that makes a lot of people uncomfortable to acknowledge, because it's like saying, well, we're a European nation, or we're generally founded in a culture that might seem as though we're not allowing other people to be here. The problem with a lot of immigration, I think, ultimately comes when you say, you can come to my country, but you have to, learn a language and adopt our values. If we can't clearly articulate our values ourselves, if we don't know where they come from, or if we don't have any sort of institution that's helping us maintain them, then what are we really asking you to do? And if you were coming here, why would you do that? Why would you leave something that gives you structure, purpose, and meaning to just jump into the void of, well, we're trying not to step on anyone's toes and we don't want to do anything that might upset someone else? I mean, a strong cultural tradition is good for the people. It gives order and helps maintain structure without the need for government to force it down your throat.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.